Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to start here real quick. Didn't take very long, of course. Apparently, the ceasefire in Palestine doesn't exist anymore. Again, didn't take very long, rather predictable. And just again, as a quick reminder, anytime you hear the term Hamas, that of course means that they are funded by Zionists. That's basically the way that goes, just throwing that out there again. Again, it was all rather predictable that this would be the case, but, that's the enemy. That's who the enemy is. That's why Netanyahu didn't go to Egypt last week. That's why all of that transpired the way that it did. Again, lots of different stories out there as to what went on, and explosions and gunfire still occurring and everything else, but it doesn't matter. It was all rather predictable. In fact, toward the end of last week, I found myself watching this gal's podcast. She has a show on Rumble. Her name is Kim Iverson. I've seen her before once or twice and watched her show once or twice before, and it's not, again, that she's wrong. She just doesn't dive a little bit deeper, and she certainly doesn't necessarily look at many things multidimensionally. She does understand what's going on over there, which was refreshing to hear. But again, she openly did admit basically what I just said, which is that Hamas has been run and funded by Israel by and large, and certainly their government and the radicals that exist over there in their own government. And of course, it's basically, again, just a propped up enemy. And then she showed a clip of Palestinians being executed by Hamas or something along those lines, individuals, again, who were Palestinian attempting to fight back against Hamas, or some Palestinian militia, again, trying to fight back against Hamas and get rid of them. And then these Hamas individuals lined them all up, got them on their knees and shot them all in the head. It's an interesting video. I assume it's real, but even so, again, she openly admitted that anytime that you hear the term or the name Hamas, you have to understand that it is Zionists who fund them. They would not exist if Zionists didn't fund them. Again, why would Hamas, who claims to be defending Palestinians, murder Palestinians? Again, the interesting back and forth with all of this, too, and the sort of political confusion with everything is you can clearly see that we have the exact same problem in our country. We have numerous individuals, again, who are politically divided on a left or a right-leaning spectrum, a blue or a red-leaning spectrum, which, of course, is completely fake, without understanding, again, that there is just the truth, and there's where the money goes, and what people do, and the manipulation that takes place, and the social engineering and everything else. It happens constantly. And it's happened for lifetimes and for generations. And people, again, still have a very difficult time understanding this. I mean, many people don't even know that social engineering is a thing, and that people are constantly manipulated. Yes, the school environment's directly involved. I mean, I think most of us know that. At least I would hope that we do. Unfortunately, there are many who have absolutely no clue. Again, this whole No Kings rally throughout the entire United States and different cities and towns throughout the United States, it's beyond pathetic, but again, it is social engineering at its core. It's the pure definition of it. You can move these people around and manipulate them to do anything. They are not, they are not thinking people. They don't even have the wherewithal or the observational skills to look around where they are, take a gauge as to who is there, the races, the ages, whatever it may be, of the people who are actually in these particular rallies, and understand that they're actually not in any majority whatsoever. They, again, are pawns in a game. They're being used, and they either don't know it or they don't care. Me personally, I tend to lean toward the fact that they just don't know that they're being manipulated. They actually believe that the thoughts in their head are their own thoughts, and that, again, they are in control of what they are thinking and what they're seeing and how they're acting, and the fact is they aren't. It's really sad, frankly, because, again, as much as we detest them, they are still Americans. And they are our fellow Americans, as lost as they are. And they are very, very lost. So, yeah. Again, we had one of those stupid little rallies in the town where I live. There may have been 500 people. kind of all lined up in one or two rows along the sidewalk, and that was really about it. And then people were getting online and saying there were over 1,500 people. I mean, it's very simple. These people can't count. They just can't count. Again, you talk about observational skills being in the ditch. That's certainly a prime example. There's another one. There was one of these, again, no kings things, whatever the hell that even means. Again, the simple fact that it's called no kings should show everybody, again, the social engineering that's taking place and the absolute manipulation and hypnosis, that these people will fall for anything. Again, just like they use the term democracy and they don't even know what that means nor care, and that we don't live in a democracy. But in Atlanta, Georgia, they had a big one as well, but it wasn't that big. And when you looked around at the crowd of people that were there were no blacks. There were no black Americans there. It was just a bunch of old hippies, and that was basically it. Again, you might hear a black speaker every now and again at that Atlanta, Georgia rally, but people have had it. They're done with this. Again, they are not in the majority. The people on the left, so to speak, in this country and the socially manipulated are not in the majority. On a Saturday, again, one of sort of the last Saturdays before the fall officially breaks here, and the weather starts to change dramatically, most people were just living their lives peacefully. They weren't participating in some rally standing next to an octogenarian dressed up like some kind of a dragon, or people wearing weird hats and holding weird signs like it matters. Again, they have no powers of observation. They don't look around and go, who's not here? And the fact is the vast majority of people just aren't there. They have more important things to do. They have lives to live. They have downtime that they take very seriously. They work hard. They don't like watching their tax dollars get wasted, and they don't, frankly, like watching their fellow Americans be manipulated and used. And then, of course, just be a constant hypocrite on a constant basis. It's astounding. But, if this is how these miserable people want to spend their miserable brainwashed lives, I suppose they get to do it. But wow, it's overwhelming. Anyway, I don't want to rant too much about the no kings nonsense because, frankly, I don't care. Again, get a life. Not to mention, if you were a woman there and you brought your husband, that's not your husband, it's your girlfriend. So, again, the number of ballless men and spineless men who show up at those things is astounding to me also. I mean, these are not well-read individuals. These are not individuals, again, who understand the actual founding of our country and what it meant. This country wasn't founded on people wearing Velcro sandals, holding signs that are barely legible with, a Crayola marker on a piece of cardboard. I mean, I hate to give them a history lesson, but, that's not what this country was founded on. And if anybody thinks, again, that person is actually going to stand up for anything correct, let alone actually fight back if there were really some kind of a kinetic war here on our own soil, you've got to be kidding me. That person will be curled up in the fetal position in their wife's lap. It's pretty pathetic. But, that's who they are. That's what they do. They operate in echo chambers. They talk in echo chambers. And that's it. And they don't count. They don't understand math. They don't understand the concept of percentages. Just look around again and see how many people actually believe what you actually believe. How many people are in a general area in total? And then, of course, how many people are participating in the thing you're participating in? If the vast majority of the people in that general area are not participating in the thing you're participating in, then you are by default in the minority. Again, I thought this was very easy grade school percentage math, but apparently it's difficult for a great deal of people. In fact, with the no kings thing to the side here just for a minute, let me give you another example that kind of proves my point. This, of course, is something that everybody's familiar with because it's been thrown down everybody's throat, whether they want to accept it or not, and whether they want to participate or believe in this or not. I found the events of last week regarding, again, Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's so-called wife, which I don't believe they're actually married. Funny how no one has an actual real wedding photo of any consequence. I've seen a couple of pictures, but I don't know. It just seems fake to me. On top of that, they rolled this woman out wearing a lacy black dress with that see-through, seems rather inappropriate. But to receive, again, the so-called Congressional Medal of Freedom. Again, it's odd. And her acting is the worst. And this right here, again, is where you can pick up on the fact that people are waking up. If you get on Disclosed TV, which is, well, of course, it's on every social media platform, but if you get on their Telegram page, and Disclosed TV, by the way, is one of the largest Telegram pages that exists, if not the largest. It's a general news outlet, and they, of course, have a comments section. So they posted a little 1 minute and 20-second clip of Erica Kirk whispering into the microphone like a weirdo. Dabbing her left eye with a handkerchief because apparently she only leaks out of one eye, which, of course, she hasn't cried yet. So there's that, which, again, seems odd. But in the comments section, that's where the real juice is. So I took screenshots of the comments, and I'd like to read them to you. I'll just summarize it very quickly before I get into these, and I'll just say that the vast majority, and when I say vast majority, I mean 99% of the comments in the comments section know that this whole thing was fake. They know that Charlie Kirk is not dead, that the shooting was AI enhanced, and he wasn't really shot. So there's that. Of course, that raises lots of questions as to the who, what, where, when, why, and how, and all of that. Again, much like the fake Trump shooting, same thing. I tend to believe, again, that one or both had something to do with them having intel that someone wanted them dead. And so in catching the individuals and the communication lines of the people who wanted them dead, they simply jumped the gun and made the move themselves in a theatric display, so to speak, to, of course, socially manipulate the public, but also catch the bad guys. Again, me personally, why don't you just catch the bad guys? Why does it have to be some clandestine operation to manipulate the public at the same time? That's the part of all of this that I'm not a fan of. But either way, here are the comments. And again, I'm starting with the very first comment. It says, "Something doesn't seem right with her." That's the first comment, with 53 likes. It goes on. Another one says, "He sure recovered from jet lag quickly. He is only just back from the Middle East," referring to President Trump. Another one said, do you seek, or see probably is what they meant to say, how fake Erica only dabs her left eye. The same on all videos. She has faked emotion." Another person said, "I don't trust her." Another person posted an emoji of a movie camera and a bucket of popcorn. Another person said, "Does she ever cry out of her right eye?" Let me keep going here. There are a ton of them. Another person said, "Fake cry." The next person said, "Her clothes are inappropriate other than being black for mourning, quote unquote. She was in all white at the spectacle in Arizona." Yeah, seems a bit strange. Another person said, "World is a stage, getting distracted instead of being in the world. The Lord is coming back soon." Another person said, "Charlie isn't dead, it's a psyop." The next person said, "There's so much that isn't right with this whole thing. Just found out they scrubbed the crime scene and literally paved over the grass and removed security cameras in the ceiling of the place he was shot a week after it happened. Showed FBI hosing it down and tons of workers redoing everything. It should be remaining a crime scene until after the trial of the shooter. Who isn't the shooter? Now the jury can't visit the crime scene. This smells like shit," unquote. All of the comments are just like this. It's all of them. Another person said, "Honeypot. Another person said, I ain't Charlie and I don't idolize men. Another person agreed with the previous person who said Charlie isn't dead, it's a psyop. Another person said, what the F is she wearing? It just goes on and on and on. Another person said, she's an effing traitor. Another person said, 0 tears again, so tired of this fake act. Another person said, I'm thinking he was married to a spy. I was being charitable towards her at first, despite my gut feeling. She was acting, and quite horribly too. The way she always dabs her left eye and the tissue, never her right eye, strangely. Does she cry out of one eye only? It's just too good. It's too funny. Which is always dry. Seems sus, and that's the least of it. She seriously gives off B-movie actress vibes throughout this entire ordeal. I'm going to stop there, but it's every comment, and I read those in order. I wasn't skipping around. Again, no one's buying it. People aren't buying it. Unfortunately, there are people who do, and that's the sad part. That's the strength of social manipulation. It's designed to take thinking on an individual brain basis completely out of the equation, which frankly I also think should be remarkably insulting for everybody. They should feel insulted. That again, they're not looking at things objectively. They're certainly not reading, we know that. They're not researching real history. And they aren't connecting these dots that are right on top of each other. And again, as a result of all of that, that means that someone else is always doing the thinking for them. They turn on their TV, they might as well be turning on a stranger in their living room or wherever they're watching it and saying to it out loud, do my thinking for me. Happens all of the time, and it's terrible. Tricked a lot of us for a lot of different reasons. The only difference is that a lot of us have woken up to it. We know exactly what's really going on regarding that social manipulation. So again, there are endless examples all of the time, but it's still refreshing to see that there are people waking up. It takes some time for some people, of course, as it has all of us. But when it comes to these particular events that are just thrown at everybody on a constant basis, again, how people react as soon as it happens is usually the tell. Like I said earlier regarding the whole issue, and then I promise I'm going to stop talking about it, but the night that happened, the way that Fox News was behaving was absurd. They were memorializing Charlie Kirk instead of saying there's a shooter on the loose. Why are we not talking about a manhunt? Why all of a sudden was everybody like, well, I remember when Charlie did this, and I remember when I met him here. That was the first real tell. Not to mention they weren't showing it on television because they didn't want to show people how fake it looked. So they were passing it around on social media, but again, it was designed to be dramatic so that people wouldn't even look at it. Much like 9/11 or any other event, same kind of thing. That's the strength of social manipulation. These people know how the brain operates. They know, again, that when you see something like that, a person gets emotional and the reason and logic portion of the brain turns off. And therein lies the problem. Just like the no kings thing, just like, again, lots of different events. It's just emotion. It's socially manipulated outrage and hive mind think, which is too bad. Because in the end, the people being manipulated, they're the ones that will suffer. And they are suffering, they just don't know it. Okay, moving on. I've read this person's posts before, and I know it's a complete stranger, and I have no idea who this is, but again, it's just food for thought, which is the only reason that I read it. This is Observing Consciousness on X. And again, they have a couple of posts here, one particular having to do with money, and then the next having to do again with communications, again over in the Middle East. And I just want to read both of these because, again, I just find them interesting. The first one said the following here. It said, quote, first, tariffs cut off the global middlemen. The IMF, World Bank, BIS, BlackRock, etc., who laundered and leveraged nations through debt slavery and black market trade routes. It says, then Southcom is cutting off the cartel lifelines running through the Eastern Pacific, Caribbean, Central American land bridges, and Venezuelan coastal corridors, shutting down the maritime, air, and overland trafficking lanes that once fed the global narco-state network. Deep State is feeling the pinch. Northcom is moving the DC federalization template state to state, taking out deep state proxy terrorist groups such as TDA, Antifa, NGOs, and politicians that stand in the way. Trump froze the Middle East into a peace deal. The whole deep state system of systems is locked down. Boom diggity, unquote. Again, there is no doubt that what is happening is certainly strategic and that there is more to it than what meets the eye. Think again of what's going on in Venezuela, and really the only thing that people are seeing on their TVs, the only thing that they're seeing physically is the occasional boat or small-sized submarine, get hit with a missile and then blow up. That's about it. But there's way more taking place there. Like they said, the number of communication devices that we have in that general area, and that people are, again, listening into, our military, of course, listening into their communications to figure out where they're going, what they're doing, where they're hiding, et cetera, et cetera. All of that's happening. Same thing in the Middle East, which brings me to this post. This was on, let me get you a date here. This is on October 18th. Again, Observing Consciousness on X. They said the following: look at it this way. Trump already locked down the world. He took control of the money rails. Tariffs replaced taxes. Therefore, every trade route now runs through his treasury. The Fed has been neutered. The Board of Governors reports up. Globally? The IMF, BIS, and central banks are surrounded. Think about it. Their leverage is gone. Trump tied global commerce to America's balance sheet. Energy independent restored the base layer. Took over AI. Corporate captures. It says Southcom cut the narco routes that fed black budgets. BRICS aligned under new trade terms planned all along. And then they said, zooming out, every node of the old system now routes through the new system on sovereign rails. Trump's tariffs became the choke point. The flow is his. The world moves through him. This is how peace is enforced. Through control of energy and exchange. Our system has totally transcended and included their corrupt system and turned it against them. Every domain captured and flipping sovereign. Look around. Media magically starting telling more and more truth. Deep state-funded media outlets losing funding. That is just media. The same corporate capture template was used across all industries. Twitter 1.0, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard captured tied money trails across all corporations. We captured BlackRock's Aladdin AI, which handled over $20 trillion in trade deals annually. With the early big tech captures we took over AI, you are seeing signs of the public disclosure of these captures. Trump partners with Palantir across all industries. Pure signal. He was telling Deep State and us, quote, we have it all. And then they said, read more below. He goes on here. Peace across the globe is this close, quote unquote. Andrea Bocelli, performing at the White House on December 5th, signals a new frequency. Trump is showing how he commands the field. In the Middle East, he ended chaos. In Ukraine, he sets the same order. Stop the killing, go home as this ends now. Carolyn Levitt confirms what the people already know. Quote, America ends endless wars. Bocelli's voice carries purpose. This is by design. Harmony returns where darkness once ruled. The sound of peace announces the shift from disorder to divine alignment. They said, I sense Israel and Gaza will flare once more. Swift precision will erase what remains of the deep state web in the region. Ukraine follows. And then they said, think Operation Midnight Hammer as a template. EU, NATO, and every hidden hand lose control as the grid of influence collapses. Southcom accelerates with discipline. That narrative is highly active. The Joint Task Force has sealed the southern lanes, cutting narco-trafficking lines from Venezuela through Mexico. Maduro is panicking. His days are numbered. Money flow halted. Deep state networks are being starved. The cabal's southern artery closed. The federalization template in D.C. secures the home front. It has spread across the nation. First is silence, then openly as the public mandate increased. Peace anchors across every theater, local, regional, national, and global. This is coordinated restoration. A synchronized rise of order Trump executes as the world resets under a new sovereign order. Unquote. I have no reason to doubt that. There is always, again, this looming concern, of course, and it's not even looming. It's openly been discussed, if not already implemented in a number of countries, but again, the digital ID infrastructure. Rightfully so, that should concern people. I cannot imagine it actually being implemented and forced on people, certainly in these so-called free countries. Again, the UK is a serious concern, so is Canada, that goes without saying. But I can't imagine it being implemented and the people actually going along with it. I just can't. Same thing here in the United States. Again, there's a lot of black pillars that are constantly saying things like, well, Trump has us distracted with 1,000 different things, but what they're doing is they're ushering in digital ID, which means we're all going to be slaves to that. And, if a person doesn't like an online post you make, or they don't like your political persuasion, then they're going to cut off your banking system, or they're going to cut off your ability again to access money and access your funds, let alone make it. I don't see that happening. You talk about a civil war. That would be it. Of course, the left in this country, who are full-blown communists, and they admit so, they would be okay with it, not knowing, again, that they would be the biggest slaves of it. And it would be used against them too. But I mean, if you played that out, okay, that entire, again, digital ID apparatus, and all of a sudden everybody were actually tied to such a thing, and they, again, couldn't pay their bills or couldn't pay their property taxes or what have you, if they didn't, again, align with a particular political persuasion or a social engineering apparatus or a wavelength of thought that the enemy wanted people to engage in, then what would happen next? Would people grab guns and go and kill their bankers? Would they start killing elected officials in their local areas? Would they turn against police? You would have a full-blown war if that were to be the case. But I think, again, that good people understand that the digital ID apparatus has been also sped up. Much like, again, the COVID lie and the vaccination lie. It's been sped up to show people what was actually planned for us in the long run. Which is why, again, it's happening so quickly. Which is also why it's pissing off people at such a high rate. Is because, again, this is something that would impact everybody in a negative way, regardless of their political persuasion. Everybody would be the victim of such a thing. But again, its implementation was designed to be just that, implemented over a long period of time so that it would be practically invisible. Well, it's far from invisible now. People can see it. They're learning about it. People are lecturing about it. They're writing books about it, and they don't like it. And again, rightfully so. They're marching against it in the UK as we speak. That's continuing to happen, which is good. But there wouldn't have been any marching against it had it been practically invisible and so streamlined that, again, its acceptance would have been basically without any fanfare whatsoever. There would have been no disruptions. It just would have been, again, drawn out over the course of time. But that's not happening now. And again, I think that speeding up of that plan, in summary, is on purpose. It's not to bring it here faster so that we all have to accept it. It's to bring the idea out of the shadows into the light so that it burns up when the people start to realize what it was all about in the first place. So that's my 2 cents on that, no pun intended. But yeah, I just think that there's a lot of good stuff happening here, and we're not being told of a great deal of it. In fact, I'll make mention of this. This is rather asinine, but it's showing people again that these individuals are exposing themselves as being really low-level thinking individuals, and let alone social media hacks or, again, being paid to just try to manipulate people. But I've brought up the name Ryan Matta before. He's on X, of course, and he's made, again, a good documentary, at least one, on child trafficking, which is highly educational, and I suggest people watch it. But, he's over on X on a constant basis saying that Erica Kirk and J.D. Vance are going to be the next president and vice president of the United States. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I just read you the comments on Disclosed TV, the largest news outlet on Telegram, which is by and large conservative. And you can tell how many people don't like Erica Kirk. So, no, I don't think she's going to be the vice president of the United States. That's pretty stupid. But again, it goes to show that the social engineering does occur on both sides all of the time. People aren't free from the social manipulation just because they sit on one political side or another. Everybody can be manipulated, but again, I also think that there's a great deal of very good things happening behind the scenes that we're not going to know about. It's just about, again, trying to read between the lines, trying to connect the dots, and do the best that we can. Again, there was also this. This is something I think is kind of interesting. Certainly, again, having to do with the shutdown, which is also very coordinated. It is not an accident. And it has to do, again, with an executive order that was signed back on October 15th. It is titled, Ensuring Continued Accountability in Federal Hiring. This is rather nice. Here's a quick little summary of this executive order. It says here, background and purpose. Issued by President Donald J. Trump, the order highlights the administration's success in reducing the federal workforce by over a 4-to-1 ratio of departures to new hires, exceeding goals from Executive Order 14210. It aims to sustain these efficiencies, optimize staffing for critical missions, and align federal hiring with administration priorities like national security, immigration enforcement, and public safety to benefit taxpayers. I'm going to keep going with the summary here, but this is very well done. You talk about draining the swamp, getting rid of the riffraff, and cutting the fat. This is exactly how you do it. And then, of course, you reposition these positions and the people who work within to actually focus on the safety of our country and law enforcement. Again, that's very difficult for me to disagree with. I thoroughly enjoy that. Also, the next point, hiring freeze. Imposes an indefinite government-wide freeze on filling vacant civilian positions or creating new ones across all executive agencies, regardless of funding sources, unless exempted by the order, required by law, or approved by the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. The next bullet point says exemptions and prior approvals. OPM's director can grant exemptions, prior exemptions, from the January 20th, 2025 hiring freeze memorandum and July 7th, 2025 ensuring accountability memorandum remain in effect unless revoked. Exemptions also apply to positions essential for national security, homeland security, immigration enforcement, public safety, and other administration-aligned roles. Again, it's all about proper enforcement here, which is good. We're not setting up DEI clubs and I don't know, is this statue or that statue racist? I mean, that's not what they're engaging in here. They're getting rid of those people in those ridiculous think tanks, firing all of them, dismantling any department that was doing such a thing, and then, of course, not hiring any of them back. The next bullet point, strategic hiring committees. Within 30 days, each agency must establish a strategic hiring committee chaired by the deputy agency head, including the chief of staff, to review and approve all position creations or filings, ensuring alignment with national interest, agency needs, and administration priorities. Approved hires must be reported in writing to OPM. The next one says annual staffing plans. Within 60 days, agencies must submit coordinated annual staffing plans to OPM and the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, for the upcoming fiscal year. Plans should focus on improving efficiency, eliminating duplicative, unnecessary roles, reducing low-value contractors, enhancing accountability, prioritizing high-need areas, for example, security and safety, and implementing recruitment from the merit hiring plan. Plans will be updated annually. Again, we're already seeing this in action. In fact, I would think, and venture to guess, that this is sort of the back-end reinforcement of what you're seeing with the National Guard. People are so brainwashed, again, and socially engineered that they believe that the National Guard showing up to these left-wing communist-run cities and keeping them safe and arresting people and rescuing children and getting illegal guns out of the hands of these criminals is a bad thing. They think that's evil. They think that's a bad idea. Only a communist would think that. But those communists, again, would never look a child in the face who's been rescued from child traffickers and be like, hey, good to see you, never met you, but can you go back in that criminal's house and continue to be a sex slave for that person? Can you do that? These people are so blind that they don't understand that literal lives are being saved as a result of all of this. And again, they think that this is militarizing every single city and what have you, town or whatever, and that somehow that's, again, a bad thing. Like they're just going to turn on innocent people. They're not going to turn on innocent people. They're hunting down criminals, and they're arresting individuals who are getting in their way, which is exactly what they should be doing. Again, you talk about reprioritizing what government should have been doing from the start. Its role is to protect the people. All enemies, foreign and domestic, after all. Domestic. It goes on here. Reporting and oversight is the second to last bullet point. It says agencies must provide quarterly hiring updates to OPM and OMB. A joint OPM-OMB implementation report on the order's execution is due to the president within 180 days. This is so efficient, ladies and gentlemen, that there's no way that this wasn't done or planned out well in advance. This was not some decision that was made on January 21st, January 22nd of 2025. This wasn't implemented or, again, first thought up or, hey, let's have a meeting and discuss how we're going to do this 7 or 8 months ago. This particular plan right here is decades in the making, and we are seeing it, and this is the plan, and this is a very, very good thing. The last one says general provisions. Builds on prior initiatives like the Department of Government Efficiency, emphasizes merit-based hiring while tying decisions to the elected administration's agenda. The order takes immediate effect and does not impair existing agency authorities unless specified, unquote. I can't disagree with any of that. It's too good. It's too organized. It's a well-oiled machine. Again, this was planned out way in advance. You don't implement something like this overnight, and it doesn't take months necessarily either. Again, we're watching a blueprint here on how to make our country safer and wealthier. Doesn't mean we have to participate in every single little suggestion that people make, even if, again, they say it under their breath, like RFK back in the day during his confirmation hearing when he was like, in 4 years, every American's going to have a wearable device on them. No, I still won't, and never have, still won't after, the next 4 years. Still ain't going to happen. But again, this is a good thing. We get to take certain things with a grain of salt. And of course, we get to vote with our feet and walk away from a number of different things and just not participate. But our safety and security as Americans within our own country is a huge concern. And you have endless testimony online, again, of people in Memphis, Tennessee, openly saying thank you. Thank you to the National Guard and law enforcement for working together. Again, rounding up all of these illegals and gangs and a number of other things. Again, that was discussed even back in the Q drops that this was going to happen, and now it's happening. And just in case anybody's curious, they're not going around and rounding up white supremacists, quote unquote. No, they're rounding up black gang members and illegal aliens. That's what's happening. It doesn't matter if they're men, women, or children. If they're here illegally, they're here illegally. But that's who they're rounding up. And again, the people who are noticing this firsthand are the actual law-abiding citizens, regardless of race or gender, who happen to, again, live in those areas. And then they're taking to social media and they're saying, hey, thanks for what you're doing. We can see it. I can play outside now without being shot. I can walk down the street without being mugged. I can do this, I can do that. This is the quietest that this town has ever been, or this city's ever been, or this neighborhood's ever been. That's a good thing. But only a communist would lead somebody to believe that we're being ruled by a king. In fact, in conclusion here for the geopolitical portion of the show, let me mention this chart. I think I put this chart up on Gab, and I think I put it on my X page also. This is a nice little diagram of how the media manipulates individuals, specifically when it comes to the causes of death in the United States, based on what the actual large list of the causes of death are broken down by percentages, but what the mainstream media outlets, in this particular case, both left and right wing, so to speak, and how they are more aligned with one another than what people can possibly imagine, and aligned against the actual facts. This comes from media mentions from Media Cloud in 2025, this year, along with death data from the US CDC in 2025, and the Global Terrorism Index. This is where they gather basically all of these percentages. So here are the actual causes of death in the United States, specifically in the year 2023. Again, what is the number one cause of death, do you think, back in the year 2023? It was heart disease, with 29%. Next down the list is cancer, at 27%. Then accidents at 7.8%, then stroke at 7%, lower respiratory diseases 6.3%, Alzheimer's disease 4.9%, diabetes 4.1%, kidney failure 2.4%, liver disease 2.3%, suicide 2.1%, COVID, whatever, 2.2%, influenza pneumonia, 2%, drug overdose, 1.8%, homicide, less than 1%, and terrorism, quote unquote, 0.001%. Those were the causes of death in the United States, but not as far as the mainstream media would tell people. And again, their percentages are basically exactly the same from outlet to outlet, regardless of their political persuasion. And we know who runs the media, do we not? Media coverage of these causes of death in 2023 then, among the New York Times, Washington Post, and Fox News, heart disease only made up 2.8% of any of the media coverage and or stories that they brought up, even though heart disease is the number one cause of death. Cancer, they covered on basically a percentage of 4%, anywhere from 3.8 to 4.7%. Accidents was a little bit larger, 9.7% among the New York Times, 5.9% among the Washington Post, and 6.1% among Fox News. Again, when it came to illnesses like stroke, lower respiratory diseases, Alzheimer's, diabetes, even kidney failure, that made up probably 1% of all of their coverage. It wasn't a lot. Suicide made up 3.8%, basically across the board, all the way up to 4.1%. COVID-19 accounted for approximately 5 to 8% of their coverage. Drug overdoses, approximately 7.5 to 10% of the coverage across all three media outlets. And then the two largest causes of death, which happen to be the two least causes of death or lowest causes of death in the United States, but that the media covered the most, was homicide followed by terrorism. That's how people are being manipulated. Again, they cover homicide across all three of these news outlets anywhere from 42 to 52% of the time, and terrorism anywhere from 11% to 18% of the time. They are the two least causes of death in the United States, two lowest forms. That's how people are being manipulated. They believe their television, that if they see it constantly in their face all the time, then it must be the leading cause of the thing that is going on, or that it is the biggest problem. That is not true. It's called television, after all. They're telling you the vision of the world that they want you to see, not what really exists. Case in point now, American education. Let me start with this real quick before I get into local school board issues and nationwide school board issues and play some audio for you as well. This is a particular story that I'm going to revisit that I brought up a while back, but it had to do with a Michigan school district forcing students to take off their Let's Go Brandon shirts, which is unfortunate because, again, you would think it was a First Amendment right. Well, unfortunately, it was struck down in the Sixth Circuit by a 2-1 decision that the public schools did not violate the First Amendment when they censored students. And this was brought again by the organization FIRE, or at the FIRE org on X. They said, "We are disappointed by the ruling. Supreme Court precedent makes clear that public school students have a right to wear non-disruptive political apparel to school. Quote, let's go Brandon, unquote, like heck and fudge, is a purposefully non-profane euphemism frequently used in congressional floor speeches." They said, as Judge Bush's dissent explains, quote, let's go Brandon, regardless its origin, has evolved into a widely recognized political slogan used to express opposition to a now former president. It is not vulgar on its face and has become a political hallmark entitled to First Amendment protection. Said, but the majority opinion disagreed, granting public school administrators unchecked authority to censor political speech in the name of prohibiting subjectively vulgar quote-unquote messages. Connor Fitzpatrick, FIRE's lead attorney on the case, had this response to the ruling. Quote, the majority held that no matter how careful teenagers are to express their political opinions in a non-profane, school-appropriate way, schools may censor them if their expression might cause someone to think about a swear word. America's students are not so fragile, and the First Amendment is not so brittle, unquote. It said FIRE will appeal the decision and continue fighting for the First Amendment rights of our clients and public school students nationwide, unquote. Yeah. It's a disappointing ruling, but it's not surprising because, number one, it's Michigan, and number two, all you need, again, is a left-leaning judge to say that it's offensive. And then just like that, they ignore the First Amendment to the Constitution when the First Amendment to the Constitution could not be more clear. Now, speaking of even that, the First Amendment, of course, matters. That goes without saying. But you'll recognize this name. And I've played audio of him before on the show. He's a resident of Westerville, Ohio, and he speaks out, of course, at the Westerville City School Board meetings. And his name is Doug Krinsky. And again, he's anti-levy, He's pro money management, which is fantastic. He's pro accountability, which is also fantastic. And again, I'm a fan of him. I like what he's doing. He's telling the truth. He's looking at these individuals who don't know how to run a multi-million-dollar corporation, and he's giving them hell. And he's, again, telling it exactly the way that it needs to be told. And he's correcting the record and a number of other things. I decided to send him an email the other day, and he was nice enough to get back to me. And it had to do with a policy that the Westerville City Schools all-female board members, except for the one guy, apparently decided to implement, and they certainly decided to implement it because they didn't like specified criticism. And by specified, I mean they don't want to be singled out, like don't make fun of me kind of singled out. What they don't understand, because they don't read and they're not well-read people, and they also, again, don't look up the law, and they don't think to ask whether or not the thing that they're trying to implement is breaking the law. They implemented a policy that essentially said you cannot name a single board member and or school employee while you are speaking in the public comment section, and you cannot single out anybody. And you cannot say what they have or have not done. You basically just have to make very broad general statements. Well, a communist or a moron would think that that was okay. It, of course, is not okay, and it violates the law. So here's what I said in my email. I said, allow me to introduce myself. I said, my name is Sean Brooks, and I host a podcast here in Southwest Ohio titled American Education FM. I have covered the Westerville City School District for years, and I have a connection there. I have supported you and your group, which is Concerned Citizens of Westerville, on many issues, in particular their unjust elimination of LifeWise at the time, and voting against any and all levies. I've played audio on my show from your school board meetings and within the public comments portion with regularity. I then said, with that said, there is also this. WCS board policy restricting public comments, specifically criticism of board members or employees, is 100% unconstitutional and violates Supreme Court precedent. Madison School District versus Wisconsin, specifically Wisconsin Employment Relations Commission in 1976 and then again in 1983, says the following here on page 429, US 176, of constitutional guarantees. Quote, whatever its duty as an employer, when the board sits in public meetings to conduct public business and hear the views of citizens, it may not be required to discriminate between speakers on the basis of their employment or the content of their speech. And then, of course, there's precedent before that. Police Department of Chicago versus Mosley, 408 U.S. 92 and 408 U.S. 96 in 1972. It says, again, this is specifically the Madison School District in Wisconsin and the union were having a dispute back and forth. And they were basically saying, again, that you can't limit participation, but you also, again, cannot limit who says what about which member. Again, you just, it should go without saying, you can't limit freedom of speech. If an individual is an elected official or not, or is hired by elected officials, and they sit up there with their placards with their names on them, then you get to address them individually for a thing that they have done or have not done. And they don't get to shut you down because you isolate or single out one of them or two of them or more. Anyway, regarding that Supreme Court case, it said the following here. During a school board meeting in Madison, Wisconsin, teachers' union representatives addressed the board to criticize its negotiation during a labor dispute. The board later ruled these statements, quote, out of order, under a state law prohibiting public discussion of pending, quote-unquote, collective bargaining issues at open meetings. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if something is pending. Doesn't matter if something is ongoing. You're allowed to comment on it, and people are allowed to bring things up and ask you particular questions. They don't have to answer you, but they can't stop you from saying it. It went on here. It said, in the U.S. Supreme Court decision, the court ruled 9-0 that the First Amendment protects the rights of the public to attend and speak at open government meetings, including addressing and criticizing public officials on matters of public concern. Justice Thurgood Marshall wrote the opinion holding that the First Amendment safeguards public participation in such forums. The court struck down the restriction, emphasizing that, quote, when government opens its mouth to speak, it must open its ears to hear, unquote. There were, of course, other precedents set as well. Terminello, if I'm saying that correctly, versus Chicago, 1949, and White versus the City of Norwalk, 1992. It established that official government meetings like school boards, city councils, or legislatures are limited public forums where citizens have a constitutional right to speak on public issues. It prevents officials from silencing criticism, unquote. And again, I wished him the best of luck in the future, defeating their levy and so on and so on. He got back to me, said, thanks, this is awesome. I'll use this in the future. I said, go for it, no problem. He's got a great website too, again. Let me get it for you here one more time. theconcernedcitizensofwesterville.org. It really is very simple and straight and to the point. It shows exactly what's been going on in that school district regarding money, test scores, and a number of other things. That again, there is no correlation between spending more money and increased literacy across every subject. There's zero correlation. You can throw money all you want at it. That isn't going to solve anything. But as I've said before, the large picture with these school districts is they do not understand that the reason that they are losing money is not just because state governments are giving them less money. It's because their product sucks. They have so many distraction elements within their environments that real learning is not taking place. It's game playing, it's ideology sharing, it's indoctrination. The truth isn't being told, that now they've stripped cell phones away from everybody so you can't even look anything up anymore properly if you wanted to in the first place. And again, when you talk about social engineering, these are the environments that perpetuate it. Every social engineering experiment that shows up on television via government or global governments, plural, always finds its way into an American school. Always. Thereby leaving the people inside of those buildings, whether they be part-time attendees or actual employees themselves, getting paid or not, they are manipulated by that social engineering. Which means, again, what learning is really taking place? If they're just believing what's on their TV and then showing up at school and repeating it, then everybody's getting a lie twice. And then that lie is being assessed, your knowledge of that lie. See, the truth is easy to remember, but people have to figure out what the truth is. Lies are very difficult to memorize. The solution, by the way, to all of these problems would be far easier if the individuals claiming to be open-minded were actually open-minded, but they're not. Again, you've heard me say this before. Now, this is my opinion, but it's an educated opinion, and it's only because, again, of all of the reading that I've done and looking into this that I've done that I can see a clearer trajectory of where American education, as we know it now, is going to end up. The more that people wake up from the matrix and they stop attending these environments are not only going to be eliminated and disintegrate and, of course, shrink as a district, but when that happens, it needs to stop competing with their fellow Americans who are already learning outside of that matrix system. Whether, again, that be a charter school, a private school, which, again, let's face it, they're really no different than public school systems by and large. They're generally the same thing. But more specifically, home learning families and home learning individuals and online learners. And those groups of people are really going to end up being in the majority eventually. This is why you see, again, the business of public education consistently emphasizing special education, IEPs, 504s, handicap this, handicap that. What they don't understand is that their line of work and those buildings will be only left for the physically handicapped and the mentally disabled. That able-bodied and able-minded individuals, young people, young adults, teenagers, what have you, will not attend these environments. This again is why I could not be a school teacher today, let alone a substitute teacher. I would never do it. Not to mention, I wouldn't make it past the first day. I'd probably be escorted off of the campus. Probably one to two periods into me actually doing a particular job there. Because that's exactly what I would say. I would look at students, for example, at the high school level and say, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Do you own a computer? No, buy one. And then you can obtain a same, if not more weighted degree, a heavier degree that means more, online at a fraction of the time at next to zero cost, if not downright free. Instead of again, driving to a school surrounded by people that you probably care nothing about, you'll never see again after you graduate. I mean, again, why are you participating in this system the way that it currently is? It's becoming not fiscally responsible to participate anymore because it just isn't. Now, in the future, I'm going to have a Substack article regarding local finances in the local school district where I live here regarding Talawanda School District in Oxford, Ohio. Again, they're burning money like nobody's business, but they also don't understand a very key component, which is if they actually advocated for educational choice, they would bring in more money and it would be better used in better ways for the people still participating in the public system. But again, you have a large percentage of students on IEPs and 504s in a way that it's never been before. But that's also by design, by the actual system itself. It's designed to manipulate those parents and those children into believing that they need paperwork that gives them accommodations when in fact they don't need it. The only accommodation they really need by and large is a better learning environment. And there isn't a better one than the home environment for the vast majority of human beings. But regarding Westerville, let me play some audio from this now. This again is Doug Krinsky's fight up there. He knows exactly what he's doing. This is about 3 minutes long. This is from NBC4 about back on October 7th. There we go. And it was titled, Westerville Income Tax Levy Becomes Contentious Ahead of Vote. They tried a property tax. It failed miserably. Now they're going to try an income tax. They're on drugs. There's no other explanation. Instead of, again, cutting pay, cutting people, cutting programs, and doing all of that, even having pay to play, which is what they should have, because you're talking about a school district with 3 high schools. There should be pay to play. This should not be coming out of the general fund, all of the sports and, sports ball and bread and circus stuff that they have. It shouldn't be just that. It should always be pay to play, in my opinion, in every public school. You want to play a game? Fine, go for it. Pay for it. But give this a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
Tax levy for Westerville schools failed last November with 52% voting against it. A month from now, voters will be asked to decide on an income tax to fund schools.
Tonight, both sides of the issue are asking for transparency when it comes to districts' financial statements. NBC4's Kyle Beachy has a look at the conflicting data. Kyle?
Jen, Jared, Westerville City Schools is going back to voters asking for more money for the second consecutive year, this time almost $24 million. And opposition and support are getting heated. And some of the numbers they're using to campaign aren't quite adding up.
We have lost 765 kids, but over that same time period, we've gained 171 teachers. well, why is the staffing increasing when the enrollment is decreasing so much?
Last year's levy failed by just over 2,000 votes, in part due to the campaigning of Doug Krinsky, who founded the group Concerned Citizens of Westerville. He's back at it this election cycle and recently posted this table on his website and Facebook page. He says the data shows Westerville schools have received 16% more funding from the state in the last 6 years.
So Senator Andrew Brenner and Representative Beth Lear sent this to me because they got the numbers from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. So what it showed was over the last 5 years, they've gotten almost $6 million more, 16.5% more than what they were getting in 2020.
Krinsky says he made this chart with numbers provided by State Senator Andrew Brenner. He claims it came from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce.
This is information that does not match our payment reports, that includes some support that was provided to private schools. And it's just very frustrating that our community is being misled into believing that we're providing false information.
There's lots of different ways that data can be represented, and it's easy to do calculations and make things show one way or another. The information that I share, you can tie directly back to our audited financial statements, the Department of Education and Workforce's payment reports.
I requested the same data from the ODE, but those numbers are not found in any state data and don't match the numbers from the schedule of revenues and expenditures on the state website, which shows a loss of 4% in state funding from 2020 to 2025. I just spoke with State Senator Andrew Brenner on the phone moments ago. He told me where he got that information from, a representative from the Ohio Department of Education, and he sent me the screenshot of that email. However, that information is not found in any of the documents on the website, so it's unclear where that information is coming from and how it's being calculated.
Because remember, school districts would never fudge numbers. School districts would never manipulate anything, and they certainly wouldn't use scare tactics to get people to, again, vote for a particular issue, in particular when it comes to funding their school district. School districts would never do such a thing. It's absurd. They never do that. They always tell the truth. Said no one with a brain. Again, they use these forecasting systems to look into the future with their crystal ball and basically try to make some kind of a determination as to how much money they're going to need in the future to keep the lights on. But one of the things, again, that is, endless things are supposed to happen before you even attempt to put a levy on the ballot. But here's the problem, and this really is a serious emotional rub. When you have the vast majority of individuals who sit on these boards of these multi-million-dollar corporations, which that's exactly what school districts are, the larger the district, the larger the corporation. You would think that the last thing that they would do is come to the public for money, that the first thing that they would do is not spend as much, look for areas to not spend as much, and then, of course, before they even consider a levy, which is a last option, you look to see who you can eliminate, why they need to be eliminated, and you don't even have to answer the question why. You can just eliminate the position. But you can also, again, get rid of the waste and the fraud and the abuse because there is always copious amounts of it. These contracts that these school districts sign on to, specifically regarding technology, are absurd. It's an absurd amount of money. And with that aside even, they, of course, would say something like, well, we have to have it, because if we don't, then we can't compete with surrounding school districts. That's not true either. Ladies and gentlemen, when the internet goes out in these buildings, they cancel school. That's how dumbed down the entire profession has become, that if the internet goes out, they now are so reliant on something like the internet that they can't even conduct a normal school day because they would view it as being a safety concern. But what they don't know or don't want to admit is that it would also be, of course, a massive instructional concern because the vast majority of school teachers today wouldn't know what to do without internet. I mean, that's a philosophical debate, and it's a true one, unfortunately, but I mean, it's a fact. They wouldn't know the first thing to do. But again, I want to play this 1 minute and 34-second clip here that I have on my X account, equally as embarrassing. Same school district, and then the president of the board, again, female, is a crier. She's a big crier, cries a lot. Started crying during a board meeting. I think I played the audio here on the show. Cried during a board meeting when they were actually forced to do their job and cut people loose when the last levy failed. I don't like doing this. This is just so hard. It's just such a hard decision. No, it isn't. You're a board of a multi-million-dollar corporation. You're supposed to do this daily. Pay cuts. Pay cuts are something that teachers should have coming to them. So should administrators. They make way too much money. Not to mention, you're having everybody do way too much. So do less, pay them less. Don't claim and blame government and the state and say, well, we have to do this and we have to do that and we're responsible for this and responsible for that. No one makes work more than a school district. They're making it out of thin air. They're making their jobs literally harder. Give this a listen. Same school district, same kinds of people in 3, 2, 1.
Last November, school levy failed here in Westerville, but district leaders say this earned income tax levy could be a game changer. Since 2021, administrators with Westerville City Schools say the district has lost 25% of its state funding. 2024's failed levy forced the district to cut nearly $5 million out of the operating budget to keep up.
We are trying to be transparent with our community and share with them if we do not have the revenue to keep pace with what we're trying to offer, then we will need to reduce services.
District-wide reductions are more than likely. That's why the district is asking voters to approve a 0.75% earned income tax levy, generating more than $24 million each year. If voters aren't on board, district leaders say more than 100 employees would have to be let go. The district would also put the brakes on at least 14 bus routes and drastically increase pay-to-play fees. Arts and music classes could be on the chopping block for elementary students as well. A levy, the district says, benefits homes without school-aged kids.
When you start looking at things like home value, when you look at safety, when you look at the types of people that choose to raise their families in a community, they're looking for schools. They're looking for strong schools.
Emotions running high as advocates push for change at the ballot.
Talking about over 14,600 students that come here every day to learn. This is so important to pass this levy.
Again, the last voice was President Meyer of the Westerville City School Board. Again, every time I hear her cry, I just think of Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own. Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying in baseball. It's pathetic. It's just pathetic. There are a million other moves that they could make, but they don't know how to make them. Yes, they made some cuts. Yes, they forced retirements on particular individuals. They didn't, again, rehire anybody for said position, which begs the question, why did you have the position in the first place? Just like the executive order I read earlier. If they're putting in a hiring freeze and they're not replacing the individuals for said position, it begs the question, why did you have the position in the first place? So never replace the position again. But yeah, I bet you'd make a ton of money by having everybody take a pay cut, administrators first. No superintendent should be making $150,000 a year or more. It shouldn't happen. Anywhere. I don't care how big the district is. Doesn't matter. Building principals shouldn't be making $100,000 a year. Shouldn't be happening. But again, they don't want to make these cuts because they're afraid that they're going to lose particular individuals. What they don't understand is they're probably going to hire better people because people don't necessarily just want to work for money. A lot of people, again, are well-intended, and money's not their motivator. Lastly, regarding Westerville, and you know where I'm going with this one, This again is the straw that's going to break the camel's back, and it has to do again with immigration. Wrote about it on Substack years ago. This will break their back. Democrats, by and large, brought in illegals and foreigners into their local areas. And if those individuals, again, are below 18 years old, or those individuals, again, are adults and reproducing, they have to send their children someplace. Westerville has a Somali population, among others. When you bring in foreigners who have a hard time speaking English, reading it, or writing it, your test scores are going to drop. But see, they're voting for their own hindrance. They are voting for the very handicap that they are now having to manage. They voted for that. We're all people. Everybody's allowed here. We're all people, and blah, blah, blah. They're voting for the very wrench in the gears that's screwing up the whole thing. So much so, and I discussed it in previous episodes, you have Somalis showing up at these board meetings, giving the board members hell, like, and I mean, they're giving them hell, and they're saying things like, my kid is struggling, my kid needs more services. Looking at this board of a weak man and all these white women, and they're basically, again, just like, well, we want everybody to be safe, and we want everybody to learn. You can't educate that. You can't educate foreigners, let alone a lot of them. And they always whine, of course, and they always say, well, we have to take in everybody. This is just what we have to do. Well, you didn't have to if you didn't invite them in the first place. If you went to city councils in your own town or your own city and said, stop bringing illegal aliens here, stop bringing foreigners here, we can't accommodate this. You're going to break our school district in half. Which means what kinds of people are they going to hire in the future? Again, you think about the long-term ramifications of all of this, let alone the short-term. They are literally creating their own problem, and they can't manage their way out of it. Other than, of course, in an attempt to tax everybody, which, good luck, because when you start taxing income tax more than it's already taxed, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're pissing into the wind, and it'll never work. And again, just sort of finish this rant very quickly. The communists, of course, who vote for such levies, and they do so blindly, they're voting for it because they think it's a contest. They think that if they vote yes on a levy, and they get more votes than the so-called other side, that they've won something. You've quite literally lost money. That's what happens. You're losing it. Again, you really have to measure the mental acuity of somebody who literally votes to tax themselves. I mean, why not just drop a hammer on your feet? Why not just do that? Slam your hand in a car door. I mean, it just really makes you wonder. In particular, I should say, and this is doubly stupid, the individuals who vote to tax themselves when they don't even send children into the district. They're just like, well, I just can't imagine life without our local school districts receiving what they need, so they say. So I'll tax myself just because, even though I have no vested interest in the school district, but I think it needs to be a part of some wider community, and that's just the way that it needs to be. No. In the future, in my lifetime, it will only be left for the mentally handicapped and the physically disabled, because there's no other way around it. The public school and charter school systems cannot even accommodate the outflow of individuals leaving the public school system. Joke's on them too. Private and charter schools don't need to exist either, because if you can read and write, you can teach yourself. Again, energy and time is the enemy's currency, and it's just being sucked out of endless people, in particular youth and their parents, all of the time. It's overwhelming. Now, let me read you this. This is kind of interesting. This came from the local Tri-County newspaper rag in the town where I live, area where I live, the Journal News. This was titled, "What Drives Someone to Run for School Board?" And then it says, report cards, comma, taxes, comma, woke ideology, and then a breakdown of the election 2025. I'm not going to read through all of this. In fact, I'm not going to read through it at all. It's worse than that. I would chalk it up to being far worse. They, of course, go through some local school districts here in Butler County, in the county where I live, and the different school board seats that are up for re-election or just up for election, period. But the fact is that it has more to it has a great deal, of course, to do with taxes and what they call woke ideology. But let's cut through sort of the lingo here. There's too much gay stuff. That's number one. It's loaded with communism. That's number two, which again, communism, gay stuff, one and the same, basically. And it's not just taxes. And it's not even like, again, how they're scoring themselves or how the state scores their district's report card, or, are our kids succeeding, as they so like to ask and like to phrase it. It's worse than that. They're running for school board, by and large. Certainly more conservatives are these days, because they're tired of having their money stolen. It's degeneracy, it's Satanism, it's illegality, and it's stealing. And, I should throw this in just as sort of a sprinkle on top, it's lying. And most morally sound people don't like any of those things. In particular, when you have to pay, certainly around here, whatever it is, your property taxes. And the more property, of course, you own, the more you pay into your local school district. Already, which is ridiculous. The only people, in my opinion, and I'm not the only one that shares this, is that the only people who should be paying into a public school system with their tax money, whether it be property or otherwise, are the people who are choosing to attend said school district. That's it. This should be common sense. If you want to send your child to a school district from kindergarten, or even, as they've, of course, included this now, pre-K, that, of course, pre-kindergarten has to be included now across the board in school districts everywhere because it's more tax money that they get. Make sure and enroll your kid in pre-K, because then we can tax you one extra year. That if you're going to participate in those systems, then yeah, you pay into those systems. But if you're not going to participate, you don't have to pay. And like any good customer or business, if you don't like the product that the business is producing for you, i.e. said customer, then you get to withdraw at any time, and your tax money goes with you. The state of Ohio is trying to make that a constant now, which is good. They're trying to normalize that more and more. It's theoretically already law. It's not even a theory. It just is law. But too many people don't recognize this. And they're still throwing their children into the local system instead of understanding that they can take their actual tax money and put it elsewhere. Which is too bad. But again, that's how strong the social engineering is. That's how strong these generational patterns are, and how difficult it is for many people to break free from it. So again, it's not the watered down woke ideology. It's worse than that. It's degeneracy. It's sexual perversion. It's sexual grooming. This is the problem. And again, if you call it that, the banshees from hell start screaming and shouting. Why? Because they're the sexual groomers. They're the ones that are being challenged. They're the ones that are being threatened. Again, it's 2025 and we're still talking about gay books in libraries, gay books in classrooms. This is still being discussed. It's an abomination. That's why conservatives, again, are running for boards. What they, unfortunately, some of them anyway, don't necessarily understand is that they have an opportunity to redo board policy on the board, which should always be the first order of business. Yes, you should immediately fire the riffraff and your most troublesome and poisonous individuals within any working environment. That's easy to do, and as a board who hires an ethical superintendent, that's the first move that has to be made. The simple threat to do that will cause mass resignation, which is a good thing. And then you have to change board policy. You have to make particular things permanent. Again, as long as the majority exists on a board that is ethically sound, you get rid of old bad policy, you reverse certain policies, et cetera, et cetera. That's the job of an actual board. The job of a board is not to show up at a prom dance and take photographs. It's not to show up, again, even at a football game and take photographs. This is my opinion. Again, you've been elected by the public to run a corporation. You haven't been elected by the public to show up at particular events and mingle and shake hands and whatever else. You don't see board members of corporations doing that. So the definition, again, of what these positions actually entail as far as their job description is concerned has to change. It has to go back to the way that it was first formulated many years ago. Because again, as we know, activism has taken over almost all of these positions, whether they be board members, superintendent, front office workers, school teachers, building administrators, you name it. They've lost sight of what the real job entails. I remember, again, when I taught, there were individuals, again, who would criticize building administrators for being in their offices all day long. Well, we don't see them. They're not walking around. They're not mingling. They're not communicating with students in the hallways. They're not in the cafeteria. They're not blah, blah, blah. Me personally, I never wanted an administrator in a cafeteria or mingling with students in the hallways. I wanted their asses in their office doing work and making the job easier for everybody. Managing humans, adults specifically. That's the job of a building administrator. Board members, your job is to manage a multi-million-dollar corporation. That means you have to go through the numbers, you have to go through the books, you have to figure out where the waste is, you have to eliminate that waste, eliminate those perks. I've said this before on the show, I'll say it one more time. If you want to shit your pants in real time, do an open records request for your local school district and ask for the purchase orders for an entire year. Real simple email. Subject line of the email, open records request. Pursuant to our local open records request and state open records request laws, I am asking for the document of all of the purchase orders for the last academic year in PDF format. You can send as many PDFs as you want. Thank you. Have a nice day. And you'll get it back. And you'll shit yourself. The amount of money that is being wasted and stolen from taxpayers is over-flippin'-whelming. And it's petty, too. Very petty. You have superintendents and front office workers and building administrators who are taking tax dollars to pay for their lunches, cell phones, gasoline, automobiles, any other form of personal transportation. And they're using district funds, i.e. your money, to re-up their own certifications. And each certification and each licensed individual, they have to pay to re-up their certifications. That's not free. It's anywhere from, again, $50 to $200 every whatever it is, depending on the year of the license, whether that be a 5-year license or whatever, depending on where you live. Excuse me. But again, that shouldn't be coming out of the taxpayer's money. That should be coming out of the paid employee's paycheck. Are you telling me again that a superintendent who's making over $150,000 a year can't pay for his own lunch or her own lunch? Can't pay for their own gasoline? Can't pay for their own certification, or can't pay to take a trip to receive so-called professional development to a neighboring town or a city for a weekend? Bullshit. Of course they can. That's one of the first places you go. You reverse that kind of policy immediately. And you look at everybody and you go, okay, if you want something, guess who's paying for it? You are. Because the district is done paying for it, i.e., the town and or city taxpayers are done paying for your shit that you should be paying for yourself. The amount of money that they will save, depending on the size of the district, could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the district. But again, anytime money shows up, the first thing these most corrupt school boards do and school districts do and superintendents do is they look to see where they can steal. What can they get for free? They'll pay themselves higher contracts and higher wages, not school teachers, but themselves. Thereby, again, stealing. This is why conservatives are running. That's the real reason. Those are the real reasons. Because they're figuring out that they're being lied to. And most moral human beings don't like being lied to. Now, speaking of lying, here's a local issue. This was in the local rag, the Oxford Free Press, which it's unfortunate that the two individuals who apparently manage this communist rag are not journalists and they don't do their due diligence. And of course, they aren't, well, they're slow. We'll put it that way. They're slow in the uptake. There's serious concerns here regarding a local move that was made by individuals in this school district, in the Talawanda School District in the town where I live, Oxford, Ohio. One of the individuals who hopefully you're going to hear from very shortly here on my show, as I plan on having a conversation with both of these gentlemen who are running for school board against the two individuals who currently sit on the board. Both of these gentlemen are conservatives and they're good men, and they want to see serious change in a positive, fiscally responsible direction and morally responsible direction, which is exactly what has to happen. But apparently, in the last board meeting, one of the individuals, Tom Heisler, was taking photographs of bulletin boards and all of the gay stuff that existed on the walls within the first floor of the high school. Now, jokes on the whole town, including the school district and this publication, the Oxford Free Press. I did that back in April. I posted those pictures online and was like, look at all this gay shit. And that was basically it. Because again, it's not education. And it's violating executive orders, which I've been over before. And I played audio of the public, of course, also bringing this up. Same thing with the gay books and the whole thing. It's violating HB 8. It's violating the executive order to get rid of DEI nonsense. I mean, all they have to do is just get rid of it. But they aren't doing that. So Mr. Heisler took pictures of this, gave it to somebody else. They posted it online. And then the school district worked with a couple of local communists to actually find the security footage of Mr. Heisler taking photographs inside of a public building that his tax dollars pay for. None of that is illegal. You're allowed to take photographs inside of a school building. That's not a crime. There's no law against it. None. Zero. Again, but these places are lawless. They think that they make law. They don't. I can walk around a school building anytime I want with a phone recording if I choose to. There weren't pictures of minors that were taken. School was not in session in this particular case. Again, it was before a board meeting. Nothing wrong with that. And then, again, like I just said, they very quickly got the security footage, the public did. And they basically said, look what Tom Heisler was doing. He was taking photographs and he's making everything dangerous and he's giving out the landscape of the school building, which is going to compromise everybody's safety. These people are insane. And they're panicking because they're not in the majority and they have a lot to lose and there's a whole lot to expose here. So if this is the only angle they have, it's a weak one. It's a very weak one. And like I said, it was they themselves who posted actual security footage that they got very quickly from the school district to make a point. And their point fell flat on its face. So let me mention again Tom Heisler's comments here in this particular publication, because he was interviewed for this. And he had no problem, of course, giving him a comment because, I mean, he certainly could have, and he did. But it's not a problem. Again, their director of communications is a nutbag. This should never happen. Why? I did it back in April. Nobody said anything. Tom Heisler said the following here. It said, when the Oxford Free Press reached out to Heisler via email for a response, again, like they've caught somebody breaking the law, which they haven't. Tom Heisler said the following. This is very well done. He said, quote, my platform is built upon transparency, fiscal, and otherwise. The rainbow stickers with the web address of www.glsen.org being displayed on some classrooms are from an organization that, for the most part, promotes links to political ideology and lesson plan suggestions that are not found within curriculum guidelines. He's correct. He went on and said, I was therefore following up on concerns about politicization, there we go, in the schools, and took pictures when the school was open to the public. The pictures did not include the names or likenesses of any students. I did not access any restricted area or violate any laws. I shared parental concerns about promoting some areas of the school as safe and implying other areas are not safe. The 24-25 bullying report published by the board indicates there is not a bullying issue within any of the TSD buildings. I'm glad he brought that up because, of course, that's a lie. There were this many reports, but none of them turned out to be bullying. Who believes that? Who believes that? It goes on, he said, I am aware that the Oxford Free Press has been funded in part by the Talawanda School Board, raising concern that OFP, Oxford Free Press, obtained an alleged document before being received by myself. This brings concern that a connection between the two parties implies intent for political slander. Yes, he's right. The superintendent wrote a letter, but didn't about Tom Heisler to Tom Heisler without giving it to Tom Heisler. He sent it to the local newspaper instead, and then they put it out there. Apparently, it's ridiculous. He went on and said, this is my full and complete statement to your report. Any partial dissemination or manipulation of this statement will be considered political in nature and dealt with accordingly, unquote. Again, he's 100% right. Everybody who is a taxpayer is allowed to know what's going on inside of the school building. The only reason that these whack jobs don't want people to know is because they're not supposed to be doing it, based on HB 8, which is law in the state of Ohio, and the executive order signed by Donald Trump, the President of the United States, that the superintendent himself signed off on. This is an ethics violation against the superintendent. Again, this is fantastic. They were even accusing Tom Heisler of creating some local nitwit was accusing him of creating some kind of a hit list. Again, this is how unhinged these people are. These people reproduce. They have children, for God's sakes. It's alarming. And as far as the conflict of interest is concerned, again, this is the boomerang effect that they don't seem to understand they always engage in, emphasis on the word always. They just highlighted the fact that they are the conflict of interest. In their little scheme to try to catch Tom Heisler running for school board doing something wrong, which he clearly did not, they ended up exposing their own conflict of interest with the local newspaper, members of the public, and the school board, or the school district superintendent, and certainly the administrative office, and their director of communications, among others. Because they, again, created a letter, found security footage, and then put all of it in the local newspaper and online on Facebook groups to, again, slander Tom Heisler as if he did something wrong when he didn't. That's your conflict of interest number one. Conflict of interest number two is one of the individuals who sits on the board of directors for the local newspaper, which, again, it's basically like a student council middle school paper. It's not for adults. But either way, I digress, is an individual who works for the district by the name of Stephanie Arney. So you have a school district employee who works for your newspaper. Again, these people can't spell conflict of interest. They don't even care. They just lie for a living and think people are dumb enough to believe it. Case in point, let me back up to the interim school board member by the name of Matt Wyatt. He, of course, is running for his position. He's arguably one of the most ridiculous humans who's ever sat on that board, although that's not saying a whole lot because most of them are ridiculous. Again, there was the No Kings nonsense that was uptown, and he was apparently there. Somebody was holding up one of his signs. Again, these octogenarians are so pathetic. They look like they smell. Again, better penmanship would, be a good thing. Anyway, he decided apparently to take to Facebook, and he said, quote, hanging out with a couple of 100 fellow local terrorists, quote unquote, at the No Kings rally. Shout out to the guy who brought a Matt Wyatt sign. He said that, quote, defeating fascism at the local level was the most important thing we can do right now, unquote. That is why I brought my sign and fellow school board member Pat Mead's sign. I could not agree more, said Matt Wyatt, unquote. So if everybody who disagrees with you is a fascist, then that means you're a communist. So thank you for admitting it. We greatly appreciate it. Again, he said couple hundred fellow terrorists, quote unquote. We don't think you're terrorists. We just don't think you're bright. But there weren't a couple hundred. Like I said earlier at the top of the episode, these people can't count. He thinks there were a couple of hundred. Another person apparently took to Facebook and said there were 1,500 people. You're both wrong. Again, you can't count. There were probably 400 to 500 people up there, tops. Maybe 600, maybe. So it's not a couple hundred, and it's not 1,500 people. And then Matt Wyatt said the following. He said to another local nitwit, he said, Don King, who sits on the school board and is a friend of mine and fantastic, said Matt Wyatt said, Don King and her Pillsbury Proud Boys. So one person said 1,500 people. Amali Farler said, well, it has double meaning at Talawanda. I don't know what that means. She must be handicapped. And then Matt Wyatt said, Don King and her Pillsbury Proud Boys. So a sitting interim board member running for an election for the board just called another fellow board member fat, like the Pillsbury Doughboy, along with her husband, along with anybody who supports them. And he thinks what? This is going to help him? It's pathetic, really. Again, he has no substance because he has no substance. Again, the only two individuals running for school board who are both conservatives are the only people who have any substance. These are the only individuals who are looking to make serious changes to bring fiscal responsibility and eliminate illegality and the people engaging in said illegality out of this school district. Because again, that keeps everybody safe. The status quo has not and does not. Case in point also, going back in time very quickly, I've mentioned Joseph Hall before. I brought his name up in the last episode on Friday with Kim Carter as well. The Oxford Free Press, again, the local rag newspaper around here, they ran an article about Joseph Hall very briefly, certainly in their online publication. Only problem is, and there are two major problems. Number one, they ran it 2 months too late because I wrote about it 2 months ago. And number two, they didn't get into any of the specifics, like the police report, which I also published. You can read the Oxford Free Press, I suppose, or you could read my Substack because, well, I did the legwork on the whole thing, by and large. I had some help, but I did most of the legwork. I made the open records requests. I connected all of the dots. It was pretty clear. Joseph Hall was there to have sex with a minor, and Talawanda hired him. But see, the Oxford Free Press didn't bring that up. Kind of an important detail, wouldn't you say? And then, of course, you have the case of Jason Mers molesting a child in a bathroom stall. In my opinion, ample evidence to prove it happened. That's a pattern. That's a problem. The case, of course, of Danielle Mann. She should have been fired on the spot for her post-election online TikTok meltdowns. That's an instant firing. Conduct unbecoming an educator, among endless others. Threatening students. All men who are MAGA are rapists. This is the culture, ladies and gentlemen. This is the culture that people send their children to, willfully, without thinking of an alternative. And there are certain situations, I fully understand, where there are no alternatives. However, if they can read and write, they can teach themselves. I saw a commercial the other day for TikTok, and it had to do with how TikTok is helping people learn math. Grade school math. And I thought it was funny because it had to do again with also TikTok helping school teachers learn how to teach math. And I thought to myself, bypass the teacher and just use online instructional forums to teach yourself math as a student, and you'll be just fine without the teacher. Again, the culture is changing here. But let me end with this, because this sounds just like the case of Jason Mers, although it wasn't Jason Mers. This was from PJ Media from last week, and it was titled, Elementary Educator Arrested in Disturbing Abuse Case Involving 10-Year-Old Girl. This reads again, word for word, like the Jason Mers case. This was local here, Madison County, Kentucky. Local law enforcement has charged a Kentucky educator after police say he sexually abused a 10-year-old child. Our public education system has deteriorated so severely that predators increasingly violate children in horrific ways. And it's not just male teachers. Female educators also molest both male and female students. Predators with sick and twisted fantasies deliberately pursue careers that put them in close contact with children, making it easier to exploit their victims. These crimes betray trust and inflict psychological damage that often exceeds physical harm. Destroying a child's innocence ranks among the most heinous acts an adult can commit. An arrest warrant shows that the teacher, Charles Hamilton, faces first-degree sexual abuse charges for abusing a child in Boonesboro Elementary School in Richmond, Kentucky. Hamilton, who teaches at the school and coaches middle school soccer, allegedly committed the crime on campus. Police received a report of the incident on September 8th. The victim, now 17, told a therapist that Hamilton abused her during the 2017-2018 school year when she was in 5th grade. The student said Hamilton followed her into the girls' bathroom during a power outage and touched her inappropriately through her clothes. She alleged he cupped her thigh and touched her private area. Here is a man brazenly walking into a girls' restroom at school and violating a student. Imagine how much easier it would be for predators to commit this crime if a male identifies as a transgender woman, and the left still wonders why conservatives and common-sense parents fight to protect spaces designated for biological females. The victim said Hamilton entered the bathroom without permission. She admitted yes after he came in. explaining that she believed at the time she was in love with the teacher and that her actions reflected the people in love are supposed to do. She also said Hamilton had been treating her like an adult, quote unquote. That's called grooming. Madison County School was aware of the Department of Community-Based Services, DCBS, was beginning an investigation regarding Charles Hamilton on September 8th of 2025. School district revealed in a statement, quote, on the same date, Mr. Hamilton was placed on leave pending the outcome of the DCBS investigation. Mr. Hamilton has remained on leave since September 8th and has not returned to his teaching or coaching duties. The district will continue to cooperate fully with the investigation, this statement concluded. Hamilton turned himself in to local authorities who booked him into the Madison County Detention Center. Officials set a cash bond of $50,000. None of this happened to Jason Mers. Jason Mers was not treated like that by the local police department. He was simply placed on paid administrative leave, still receives pay, was never arrested, never had any kind of a bond posted, and isn't being charged with a crime. Not yet, anyway. So just to review, a 17-year-old female can make a report that many years after the abuse took place when she was in 5th grade. And an elementary school male tells the local Butler County Children's Services 2 to 3 months after the abuse took place and the assault took place against this male child in a bathroom stall in the town where I live. And then they bury it. Someone at CPS or OPD buries it. And then when it gets brought up that next April, no arrest is made. No criminal charge is made. So they believe a female in Kentucky, but they don't believe a male in Oxford, Ohio. This right here is the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Civil War in the judicial system and in law enforcement. There is no enforcement, there is very little law, and it certainly is not fair across the board, is it? But time will tell, because as long as we're still breathing, the right thing can still happen. Kind of a long one here today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening as always. And like I said earlier, I hope to have on Tom Heisler and Corey Fry on the show, both running for local school board here in the town where I live. And you'll hear straight from them about what matters to them. And there's a great deal that matters to them. They are good men. They are ethically and morally sound. And they want the right thing to happen here. So with that said, stay tuned for that when that happens. And I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.